The ship landed with a soft thud on dry soil. Dust rose in the air as the door of the small passenger shuttle opened. Lyra stepped out, her long lavender hair tied in a neat braid, her heart beating fast. Her alien skin shimmered slightly under the twin suns. In her hand she held a folded paper, a printed picture of a smiling, strong human man. She had memorized his name, John Carter. He looked young in the picture, firm jaw, brown eyes, short hair, wearing a farmer's hat. That picture made her smile during lonely space nights. But now, standing at the edge of a cracked fence, she stared in shock. The man waiting for her was old. His back was slightly bent. His beard had more gray than black. His skin was wrinkled, sunburned, rough like dry wood. He held his hat in his hand, eyes full of something strange, maybe regret. He stepped forward slowly, boots sinking into the soft dirt. "I'm sorry," he said, voice deep and soft. "The war. And farming. They did this to me." Lyra didn't speak. She couldn't. Her throat felt tight. This was not the man in the photo. This was someone else. John saw the look in her eyes. Disappointment, fear, doubt, and maybe anger. "I sent that picture years ago," he added. "Didn't think you'd still come." He gently pointed toward the wooden house behind him. It looked old but clean. "You don't have to stay," he whispered. "There's a return ship next week." Lyra slowly looked around. Dry fields stretched far. No one else was near. She had trained herself to expect surprises, but this was too much. She almost turned back. Almost. But a loud cry echoed from the nearby hill. A child's scream. Both Lyra and John turned. A small alien child, maybe 5 years old, was screaming. Something was chasing him. A desert crawler. Long and fast with sharp legs. Without a word, John dropped his hat and ran fast. His limp slowed him, but his arms moved strong and sure. He grabbed a nearby shovel, charged the creature, and swung hard. Once, twice, dust flew. The crawler screeched and backed away. John didn't stop. He pushed it back until it turned and vanished into the dry rocks. He bent down, picked up the crying child, and checked him for wounds. The child hugged him tightly. Lyra watched, frozen. When John returned carrying the boy, he said nothing. He just nodded toward Lyra and walked the child back to a nearby home. Lyra stood still, thoughts spinning. That man couldn't walk straight, but he ran to save a stranger. That man looked broken, but he fought like someone who still had fire inside. She stepped toward the wooden house slowly. Later that evening, she stood at the porch. John was sitting in an old chair staring at the sunset. She asked softly, "Did you really fight in a war?" John nodded. "Long ago. Didn't want to, but had to. Then I came here. Thought I'd find peace. Thought I could build a life, grow food, heal." She sat beside him, leaving space between them. "I wasn't ready for you to come," he said, looking at the horizon. "Didn't think I deserved someone young, someone hopeful, someone real." Lyra looked at the fields, dry, tired, but she also saw order. Rows of planted crops. A fence repaired. A water pipe humming low. "Why did you choose me?" she asked. He turned his head slowly. "Because your eyes didn't lie. You looked strong. Not in body. In soul." She said nothing, but her fingers touched the porch wood, feeling the grain, feeling the work. He didn't ask for her to stay. Didn't beg. He just sat quietly. That night, Lyra didn't leave. She unpacked her small bag, placed it near the guest bed, and stared at the ceiling. The man was old, yes, but he didn't run from danger. He didn't lie. And maybe, just maybe, he was the first one who looked at her like she wasn't an object, but a person. Sleep didn't come easy. But it came, and with it the first flicker of something strange in her chest. Not fear, but curiosity. Morning light touched the edge of the old wooden house. Lyra woke to the sound of metal tools clinking and the soft hum of machinery. She looked out the window. There he was again, John, already working in the field with a slow but steady rhythm. He pushed a small hover plow through hard soil. His back bent. His hands, thick and cracked, gripped the handles tightly. Sweat already covered his face, even though the day had just begun. Lyra stayed inside at first, unsure what she should do. Was she supposed to help? Stay out of the way? She poured herself a cup of water and watched from the window as John paused to catch his breath. wiping his forehead with his sleeve. She noticed something. He wasn't using full auto machines. Most humans now had bots to do farm work. But John used old tools. Manual ones, harder ones. Curiosity pulled her outside. "Why not use a drone or a tractor bot?" she asked, walking to the fence. John looked up, blinking through the sun. "Can't afford one," he said simply. "Also, I trust my own hands more." Lyra tilted her head. "But it hurts you." He smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Hurt keeps me honest." She didn't understand that fully, but she didn't question it either. Instead, she opened the fence gate and walked toward him. "Can I help?" she asked. He blinked again, surprised. "You ever used a water rig?" "No," she said. "Then let's learn," he replied. The day stretched on. Lyra helped carry buckets, learned how to measure soil levels, and used a moisture reader. At one point, her dress got stuck in a wire fence, tearing slightly. She laughed awkwardly. John looked concerned but didn't tease her. He just handed her an old pair of work pants and said, "These might suit the dirt better." By afternoon, she had dirt on her face and sweat on her arms, but something inside her felt light, useful. As they rested under a tree with 2 cups of cold mineral water, John handed her a folded cloth. "Wrap it around your head," he said. "Sun bites hard here." She took the cloth and noticed the marks on his hands. Deep lines, scars, blisters that looked too old to be recent. "Were you really a soldier?" she asked. John nodded slowly. "Long time ago. Back when humans and aliens still fought over stupid things, borders, pride, fear." He reached into his shirt and pulled out a small metal Hag military ID. It was scratched and bent. Unit 19 heavy weapons. Desert missions. Lyra's eyes widened. "You fought on Varnax?" He looked up. "You know Varnax?" "My cousin died there," she said softly. John's jaw tightened. "So did half my team." There was a long pause between them. Heavy. Silent. "I lost my brother there," John said, his voice cracking slightly. "We were in the same unit. I survived." "He didn't." Lyra looked down. The wind blew gently through the dry crops. "I never wanted war," he added, "but I couldn't run from it." "Then why farm?" she asked. "Because planting seeds feels like an apology." Lyra looked at him with new eyes. She had heard many humans speak proudly of war. He didn't. He spoke of regret, of things he could not undo. That night, Lyra cooked a simple soup from native roots. John sat at the table, quiet, watching her move in the kitchen. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I know," she replied. After dinner, John washed the dishes. She offered, but he insisted. "You worked hard today. It's only fair." She smiled faintly and stepped onto the porch. The night sky above was full of stars, some blue, some red, some unfamiliar. John joined her after a while, handing her a blanket. "You'll get cold," he said. She looked at him. Tired eyes, wrinkled skin, bent back, but also a quiet strength, a dignity that didn't need loud words. She asked softly, "Why did you stay alone so long?" John looked at the stars. "Because I thought no one would see past what I've lost." Lyra wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. "Maybe you didn't lose everything." For a moment he didn't respond. Then, almost as a whisper, he said, "Maybe not." The wind was sharp that morning, cold for a desert planet. Lyra wrapped a shawl around her shoulders as she carried a basket of dry fruit toward the barn. She heard a grunt, then metal clanking. Inside the barn, John was lifting a heavy crate onto a top shelf. She stepped in quickly. "You shouldn't lift that alone." But he was already wobbling. The crate slipped and he caught it just in time, but not without pain. His arm trembled and his back curved in tightness. She dropped the basket and rushed to his side. "You're hurting yourself," she said. "I've lifted worse," he replied, breathing heavy. "This is nothing." She helped him lower the crate to the ground. Then her eyes landed on the back of his shirt. It was torn, and beneath it a long scar, faded but deep. From his shoulder to his waist across the ribs, she gasped, "What happened to your back?" John stood still, quiet. Lyra slowly reached forward and touched the edge of the scar with her fingers. "This was no farming accident." He didn't pull away. "It was on Varnax," he finally said. She looked at him, waiting. "We were ordered to clear a village. They told us it was empty, but it wasn't. There were children, families. I saw a little alien girl trapped under rubble. Same skin tone as yours. Lyra's eyes widened. I tried to help her. Told my commander we couldn't attack. He said we had no choice. But I had a choice. His voice dropped lower. I disobeyed. I ran into the rubble. Pulled her out. Got hit in the back by falling debris. My squad left me behind. Lyra's hand dropped from his back. They said I was a traitor. Took me off duty. I didn't care. The girl lived. He turned toward her. That girl might have been your cousin. Lyra's lips parted. She remembered a story her aunt once told, about a soldier who saved a child when everyone else turned away. They never knew who he was. Only that he had a human name. Why didn't you tell me this before? She asked. John looked tired. Because people don't believe men like me can change. They see the war on our faces, not what we tried to save. She stood still, processing, breathing slowly. I thought you were just an old man, she said softly. But you carry more weight than I ever guessed. He laughed bitterly. That's one way to put it. She smiled just a little. Let's get inside. Your back needs rest. That evening she sat beside him on the porch with a small herbal cream in her hand. Let me help, she said. He hesitated, but then turned slowly, letting her rub the healing balm over the scar. The skin was rough, but under her touch it softened. And the silence between them was no longer awkward. It was safe. I never thanked you, Lyra whispered. For what? For being the kind of man who runs into danger for others. Even when it hurts, John didn't reply, but his eyes shimmered, just a little. Later that night, Lyra walked past the mirror in the hallway. She stopped, looked at herself, not the alien bride who boarded the ship in hopes of a perfect husband. Now she saw dirt on her sleeves, small cuts on her fingers, and a fire in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She whispered to her reflection, maybe this is the right place. The next morning, John found a folded note on the kitchen table. It read, I'll help with the east field. I fixed the water pump. Lyra. He stood there holding the note like it was gold. A soft smile touched his lips. She stayed, he said to himself, voice barely above a whisper. And from that day forward, the house no longer felt empty. The town's harvest festival came once a year. It was a simple event. Wooden stalls shared food, music, and dancing. For humans and aliens alike, it was a way to celebrate surviving another hard season. John hadn't attended in 4 years. He said it was because of his back, but the truth was written in the way people stared at him. A lonely old human man, no wife, no children, just silence and fields. But this year he wasn't alone. Lyra stood by the door of the house wearing a simple brown dress she had sewn herself. A ribbon tied her long hair back. Her skin shimmered in the early sun. John walked out wearing his best shirt, clean but faded. His hands were nervous. You don't have to come, he said, looking at her without meeting her eyes. I want to, she replied, calm and clear. They rode the old hover cart together down the dirt road. The town was already buzzing with people. Stalls lined both sides of the plaza. Children ran past with sugar fruit. Music floated in the air. As they stepped into the crowd, heads turned. Some people stared openly. Others whispered behind their hands. That's the alien bride, right? She's too young for him. Maybe she's after his land. John heard it all. Every word cut like a blade. His shoulders tightened. He was about to walk away when something surprising happened. Lyra reached for his hand. She held it. Firm. Proud. Not hiding. John looked at her. She didn't flinch. She didn't look down. She looked forward, chin up, eyes steady. Whispers grew louder. An alien vendor at the fruit stall refused to sell them anything. Sorry, he said coldly. We don't support dishonor. Lyra's face remained calm, but her voice was sharp. Your fruit tastes bitter anyway. John blinked, shocked. She pulled him away from the stall and said softly, Let them talk. They don't know the man who plows fields before sunrise. He smiled for the first time that day. Later, the music started. Couples danced in the center circle. Some humans, some aliens, some mixed. John stood at the edge watching. His hand shook slightly. I'm too old for that, he muttered. Lyra turned to him. May I have this dance? He raised an eyebrow. You serious? Completely, he chuckled. I haven't danced in 20 years. Then you're overdue. She took his hand and pulled him gently into the circle. People moved aside, some surprised, some amused. The music was slow. Simple strings. A soft beat. John moved carefully. Stiff, slow steps. His back didn't bend like it once did. But Lyra matched his pace. They didn't spin fast. They didn't shine like the others, but they moved with real rhythm. With heart. And somewhere in the middle of the song, the crowd grew quiet. No one whispered. They just watched. After the dance, a young human woman approached them. She held a small flower crown made of field blossoms. She looked at Lyra and said softly, "You looked beautiful out there." Then she handed the crown to John. "For you, sir," you made her smile. John's hands trembled slightly as he took the crown. "Thank you, miss." The girl nodded and walked away. Lyra turned to John. "See? Not everyone's blind," he chuckled. "That's a first." She looked at the crown in his hands. "Put it on." He laughed louder. "I'd look ridiculous." "Good. That's the point." He placed the crown gently on his head. And in that moment, standing in the middle of the town that once pitied him, he didn't feel old. He felt seen that evening. As the sun dipped low, they sat on a bench outside the bakery, eating sweet bread. Lyra leaned her head on his shoulder. "You still think you don't deserve someone like me?" she asked quietly. John didn't answer right away. He looked up at the orange sky, the stars just starting to appear. "I think," he said slowly, "that maybe you're the seed that finally grew something inside me." She smiled. "Then water it well, old man," he laughed. And for once it wasn't a tired laugh, it was full alive. The sun was high, burning hot across the dry farmland. Dust danced in the wind. Birds circled above the empty fields. Lyra walked out of the house holding 2 cups of cold root water. She shaded her eyes and looked toward the east fence. John wasn't resting. Again, he was out in the field, shirt soaked in sweat, trying to fix a broken fence post. He had been out there since dawn, digging, lifting, repairing. Lyra had warned him that morning. "You need to slow down," she'd said. "You're not made of iron." He had smiled and replied, "I've fought battles with no sleep, sweetheart. A fence won't kill me." But now something felt wrong. Lyra walked faster, then started to jog. As she got closer, she saw him drop the hammer. His hands went to his chest. He staggered. Then he fell. "John!" She screamed, sprinting across the dry grass. He was on the ground, eyes open but dazed. His breath came in sharp, short gasps. "John, talk to me," she cried, kneeling beside him. His skin was pale, his lips trembling. "My chest feels like fire," he gasped. Lyra pressed her hand on his chest gently. His heartbeat was uneven. Too fast, then slowing down, then fast again. Her hands shook as she activated the emergency comm on her wristband. "This is Lyra Carter, Emergency Medical, Farm Sector 12, she shouted. "Human male, age 62, possible heart failure. Send help, please." The signal buzzed. "ETA 12 minutes, the machine voice replied. "Too long," Lyra shouted. She looked at John, who now struggled to keep his eyes open. "Don't you dare leave me," she whispered, voice cracking. "You stubborn, gentle old fool. Don't you do this now." John tried to speak, but no words came. Only a soft groan. Lyra took his hand, holding it tight. "You saved a child when you could barely walk," she said through tears. "You made a home out of dust. You showed me how to stand tall when others mocked me." Her tears dropped on his shirt. "I won't let you die in the dirt," she whispered. She ripped her shawl and rolled it up under his head. Then she placed his hand over his heart. She covered it with her own. "Hold on, John," she said. "Please. If you leave, who will water the flowers? Who will fix my bad stitching? Who will call me sweetheart in that soft old voice?" He blinked weakly. His lips moved. "What? Flowers?" He breathed. She smiled through the tears. "You'll see them soon." The sound of a med drone grew louder. A sleek silver pod flew low and landed near them. The back door opened and 2 medics rushed out with scanners and stretchers. "Pulse weak," one said. "Oxygen low. Begin stim injection." They moved fast, lifting John gently onto the hover bed. Lyra grabbed the medic's arm. "I'm going with him." "You can't. We have to stabilize him." "I am." "His wife," she said, eyes fierce. The medic hesitated, then nodded. "All right, hurry." Inside the drone, machines beeped. Tubes connected. Oxygen mask placed. The medic pushed a shot into John's chest. Lyra sat beside him, gripping his hand. "Come back," she whispered. "Come back to me." Hours later, in the medical center, Lyra sat beside his hospital bed. He was alive but unconscious. Tubes ran into his arm. A monitor showed his slow, steady heartbeat. A nurse brought her tea. She didn't drink it, she only watched him. Watched the man who built her a safe place from silence and sweat. Watched the man who never touched her without asking. Watched the man who gave more than he took. "You didn't steal my life," she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. "You gave me one." As the sun set outside the window, John's fingers twitched. Then his eyes opened. He turned his head slowly toward her. Weak but awake, she leaned close. "Hey," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "Told you. Fence won't kill me." She laughed, breath catching. "Don't ever scare me like that again." "I'll try," he whispered, "no promises." John's recovery was slow. Machines beeped softly around his hospital bed. His breathing was stable, but he still needed help to walk. Every day Lyra sat by his side. She brought him soup, read him old letters, and sometimes just held his hand without saying a word. He often joked, "You didn't sign up to babysit an old warhorse." She always replied, "I didn't sign up. I stayed." But not everyone was happy about that. One morning, 2 alien officials in dark uniforms arrived at the hospital. Their faces were firm, their voices cold. They introduced themselves as representatives from the Interspecies Match Evaluation Bureau. Lyra stood up to greet them, unsure. "We are here to review your marriage agreement," one of them said. "Concerns have been raised." "Concerns?" she asked, eyes narrowing. "Your human mate," the second one said, glancing at John, "was not as described in the program listing. His age, health, and earning ability were misrepresented." John shifted in bed but stayed silent. He looked tired. Lyra stepped forward. "He never promised riches or youth. Only honesty." The first official pulled out a tablet. "According to Section 4 of the Cross-Species Match Agreement, if one party was misled, the contract can be annulled. You are free to return or to choose another." Then the second official stepped aside and a young alien male entered. Tall, broad shoulders, shiny skin, clean hands, wearing a suit. "A model groom, this is Varek," the official announced. "He's from a wealthy family, educated, strong, age-matched to you. Ready for immediate bonding." Lyra blinked in disbelief. Varek gave her a charming smile. "You don't belong in a place like this," he said smoothly, glancing at the old farm photos on the hospital wall. "Come with me. I can give you more." John closed his eyes. Not because he didn't care, but because he did. His hand slowly loosened its grip on the blanket. Lyra stared at Varek for a moment. Then, without a word, she picked up the glass of water beside her and threw it straight in his face. Varek jumped back, shocked, drenched. "I'd rather sleep beside a broken man who knows loyalty," she said sharply, "than next to a shiny fool who talks like a seller at the fruit stall." The room went silent. The officials frowned. "You will regret this." "No," she interrupted, voice rising. "What I regret is thinking my own people wouldn't stoop so low." She turned to John. "He never touched me without asking. He shared everything he had. He never treated me like a prize. Just a person. He aged because he worked. He hurt because he gave." Then she faced the officials again. "You said he misled me." "No. He protected me from everyone who tried to use me." John opened his eyes. A tear rolled down his cheek. He didn't speak, but his look said everything. "I choose him," she finished. The next day, someone posted a recording of the moment online. A nurse had captured it on their wrist cam. It spread like fire. Alien bride defends old human farmer, refuses younger match. He hurt because he gave. Alien woman's speech melts millions. True bond. Age is not fraud. Love beyond species trended on every major network. People across planets, human and alien, commented. "She's braver than most," wrote one. "He earned that love." "You can see it in his eyes," said another. "I want someone to choose me like that," someone posted with a crying emoji. Back at the hospital, the officials returned. Quiet this time. "We misjudged," one of them said. Lyra nodded, not saying anything. John smiled weakly. "Does this mean I get to keep her?" Lyra rolled her eyes but smiled too. "You're not a prize, old man. You're a promise." That evening, as the stars returned outside the window, Lyra climbed gently into the bed beside John, resting her head on his shoulder. He kissed her forehead and whispered, "Thank you." for choosing me." She closed her eyes and whispered back, "I never chose wealth. I chose roots, and you gave me ground to stand on." Spring came late to the drylands that year. The wind was still sharp in the mornings, but the ground felt warmer underfoot. Rain had touched the fields just enough to soften the soil. John stood slowly at the porch, leaning on a carved wooden cane. His steps were slower now. He moved carefully, but his eyes were clear, his smile quiet. Beside the house, Lyra was kneeling in the dirt, her hands planting small roots into the ground. Flowers from her homeworld, bright blues, deep violets. Even one species that shimmered like metal in the sunlight. John watched her from the porch. "She used to be afraid of dirt," he muttered with a grin. Lyra looked up and called out, "And you used to be afraid of letting someone help." He chuckled. "Touché." She stood, wiped her hands, and walked toward him. "I want this garden to grow right here," she said, pointing behind the house, "where the soil is hardest." John nodded. "That's the spot where I once dug my brother's grave. After the war, I brought his ashes here." Lyra paused. "Then it's the perfect place." He blinked. "Perfect?" She touched his hand gently. "You buried pain here. Let's grow life now." Weeks passed. The garden began to bloom, not fast, but steady. Lyra tended it daily, watered, replanted, protected it from pests. One day she placed a small wooden bench beside the garden and sat with John under the shade. "I never thought this old land could feel like a home," she said. "It didn't," John replied. "Not until you came." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind and the hum of far-off farm bots. Then Lyra reached into her pocket and pulled out a small cloth-wrapped bundle. "What's that?" John asked. She handed it to him. Inside was a baby rattle. Handmade, woven from fibers. Simple but strong. John looked up slowly. "You're serious?" he whispered. Lyra smiled. "I wanted to be sure before telling you," she said softly. "But yes, we're going to have a child." He looked down at the rattle again, hands trembling. "A child," he repeated. She placed her hand over his. "A child born of pain and healing, of war and peace, of human roots and alien wings." He blinked quickly, trying to hide the tears. "I thought I was too late," he whispered, voice shaking. "Too old, too broken." "You were never too late," she replied, "just waiting for the right time." News of the coming child spread quickly. The same townsfolk who once whispered and mocked now brought gifts, soft blankets, seeds, toys. Even Varric, the younger suitor she had once refused, sent a letter. "I still don't understand your choice, but I see now. It was never about understanding. It was about heart. Wishing your family peace." John pinned that letter to the porch wall with a nail and a grin. "Proof we're doing something right," he said. On the day the first flower in the garden bloomed fully, John stood beside Lyra, hand on her belly, feeling a soft kick from inside. He looked down at the garden and said, "I used to dig graves here. Now I see color again." Lyra leaned her head on his shoulder. "You planted hope," she said. He nodded. "And you watered it with love." As the stars rose that night, they sat on the porch, side by side, watching their garden glow in the moonlight. A small wind chime, made from old war medals and farming tools, hung above them, singing gently in the breeze. Lyra turned to him. "You still think you're too old for love?" John smiled, eyes shining. "No, I think love just took its time finding me." She took his hand. "And now?" He looked at her, then at her belly, then at the garden. "Now I know," he said. "Some things bloom late, but they bloom stronger."